Adam, I know you've been 90-0 all week, so I appreciate you making some time for us this morning, man.
Yeah, it's been a nice slow week, but no, good to be on with you guys. Hope you're doing all right.
Adam, Jeff Brom, the Purdue head coach, came out with an itinerary basically proposed of what spring football could look like yesterday. I know there's always going to be either agreements or disagreements on both sides. What did you make of Coach Brom's list that he put out yesterday with what could possibly be the spring football and fall football schedule in 2021?
Yeah, sure. I credit Jeff for putting this together and taking the time to do it. I think whether a spring season's realistic or not, we could certainly go into that. But I think as he said, we owe it to the players that are here, especially the seniors, to give this a shot and talk about it and try to make a plan. And that was one of the criticisms we've heard from sources in the Big Ten, is that there wasn't much planning towards the spring. And so at least this gives a starting point. And he even admitted it's not a perfect plan, and he's open to some other ideas, but he put a lot of thought into how it could work, and not just the spring, but how the fall 2021 season could be. And, again, I think the most interesting thing was how he looked at certainly the wear and tear, because that's the number one concern of trying to play a spring season followed by a fall. And in his view, he outlined how padded practices or contact practices, full go, as you guys know, those could be reduced significantly over a 2-year span. And I think, honestly, even if this never gets adopted, it's a window into the way he's thinking, and maybe the way that coaches are going to be thinking in the future, in that, do we need so much contact to get ready for a season? Do we need so much contact in the season to get ready for games? In Jeff's mind, no. I mean, he was in the NFL. He said we barely hit during practice when he was with the 49ers. And he doesn't feel like you have to hit that much to prepare for the season. And you've had all these coaches that have gone through months and months not being with their teams and on Zooms and trying to learn that way. And I'm just curious if that's maybe the way we're going here. But that was interesting to me. And then certainly just the 2-year averages of games, how it's not that much more to play 18 games over a 10-month span versus 24 games over a 15-month span. And everyone thinks you're playing 24 over 24, but that's not the case, because you're going from a September of one year until December of the following year. So, yeah, he looked at weather. He looked at all sorts of factors. And, I think it's certainly something to be discussed within the league.
Adam, you spoke to what Jeff Brom and other coaches have talked about this. We've seen college football writers, analysts, and different people speak to this. What do you think the players think about this idea?
Well, I think the players, again, every player has to make his own decision. And when we did an anonymous survey of players around the country back in the spring for ESPN.com, we got a lot of positive responses in terms of playing in the fall, even without a vaccine, even with no fans in the stands. But as soon as we brought up a spring season, at least the older players were a little leery, especially guys who have NFL aspirations. And so that's certainly a factor. I think it'd be tough for anybody who's projected to be high in the draft to go and suit up this spring. But, I think the majority of these guys want to play. And if you give them an opportunity to play, I think you're going to see, most of these rosters out there. So it's just dependent on when you get started, if you can get started, and then how you manage, the health, the non-COVID health and safety concerns, which is obviously just the amount of games and what that can do to players. And so there's certainly risks to doing it. It'd be great if there was a way for guys to really have a lot of say over whether they play or not, and have it not really harm their eligibility. So it's a lot to kind of sort out, but I do think it's worth exploring.
Adam, if college football happens this fall, and there's still no certainties that that's going to happen with the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, and others, but if it does, and the season goes off with really not a lot of issues, with the way the Big 10 has postponed and canceled fall football, with the way the Pac-12 has followed suit, what do you think the long-term consequences would be for those schools and those conferences if they have to sit here and watch the SEC and the ACC play with little problems?
Yeah, it would be painful, no doubt, to do that. And there would be a lot of second guessing about why the Big Ten and Pac-12 went that direction. I don't think there would be second guessing from the university presidents because they have other things to be concerned about. And I think that those two groups, for the most part, are comfortable with the decision, especially in the Pac-12, maybe not so much in the Big Ten. But it would be difficult for the two commissioners if that's the case, because they're getting medical advice, they're getting advice from their sports medicine groups, which are athletic trainers and others, and they're basing their decisions largely off of that. But if those three leagues go on and have a mostly uninterrupted season and a playoff, and there aren't major problems, and it's going to look pretty bad for those two conferences. And again, I think it's still a 1-year deal. People are bringing up recruiting and come to our league because we care about football more. I mean, I can't see the Big Ten and the Pac-12 not being back on the field by fall of 2021. So I don't know how much that really matters, other than just the bluster and the way the coaches are trying to swing the minds of these recruits. But it certainly would be a tough deal in the short term.
Is the Big Ten fractured? Do they have issues amongst themselves right now? We know Nebraska and Scott Frost was very outspoken. Their leadership issued a statement that wasn't exactly in line with the rest of the Big Ten. Do they have internal issues that lead you to any great concern about the future of their conference as far as its current membership alignment?
Well, I do, and I think it's an important moment for a new commissioner and Kevin Warren to try to bring this league together, because, Mondays, I covered the league for a long time. Monday's a day that I hadn't seen, as far as the very public discord, the disagreements, and almost adversarial position I thought Nebraska took. Even I know they're looking out for themselves, and they know how difficult it'll be without fall football. But you're in a conference, and you got to live with the decisions. And this has not been a league where you've seen that very often, where the disagreements have been aired so obviously and so strong in a public setting. So that wouldn't have happened under Jim Delaney's watch. It just wouldn't. I mean, I know Jim, and he would have put the hammer down. Now Kevin's a new guy, and he's in a really tough spot, and he's a newcomer in many ways to college athletics. And so this is an important time, like I said, for him to bring this league back together, even though it's a really difficult spot for a lot of these schools.
Adam Rittenberg with us of ESPN.com on the Morning Rush. Adam, big news out of the Big 12 this week. They are moving forward. Bob Bowlesby put out a pretty brash statement about them listening to student athletes, as you guys were talking about. When it comes to the Big 12 kind of aligning with the ACC and SEC and them wanting to play college football this year, Adam, how important was it that the Big 12 announced for the potential of college football in 2020?
Yeah, it was significant. I mean, in this moment, and we'll have a story about this later on ESPN.com, but basically our sources have told us that the ACC wanted a majority of Power 5 conferences to go along. I don't think they would have stood only with the SEC, but with the Big 12 on board, they felt comfortable, and then the SEC could certainly go forward. Now, the Big 12, we heard, was fairly split going into their meeting on Tuesday night. They came out of it, I think, with a decent majority that wanted to go forward. But that's still the league to watch to see if this can work or not.
And on the note of that, when you look at college football, the projections of 2020, and I know this is probably the most fluid situation you've ever faced in your career, we've ever faced in our career. What percentage would you put on it, Adam, that we have college football this upcoming season?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think it's a decent percentage that there'll be an attempt. I don't have great confidence in a full season being completed or a season without major interruption. One thing that's not getting nearly enough attention, guys, I'm getting a bad echo here, so I don't know if you guys can fix that, but the coaches have told me all around the country that contact tracing and the restrictions around that make it almost impossible to go through a season without problems. I've talked to a group of 5 coaches this week that say if the games were right now, they'd have to forfeit the next 3 weeks because they don't have any offensive linemen or they don't have another position group, not because they're all positive, but because they're all in the contact tracing protocols. So if those leagues are truly following the contact tracing and that doesn't change, it's going to be very difficult to go through without some major interruptions.
Adam, the players movement, the Players United kind of started in the Pac-12. There's been other voices expressed from Trevor Lawrence and other leagues. Where do you see this movement going? How strong does that voice get, and what does it look like down the road for college football?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how not having a season impacts those movements. I would hope that they would continue to organize and have meetings with the league and try to improve the situation. But a lot of the discussion was that they had leverage with the season, and that they could opt not to play a season if certain conditions weren't met. So, I imagine that the players will continue to look at these things, especially those who have a season ahead, and even if they don't, I think there's a sense that this is a really important time to advocate for better conditions, whether it's health and safety, whether it's protections for their scholarships or their stipends or eligibility. I know there's a revenue argument too, and a conversation that's a little bit more complicated to have. But I sense that most of these athletes understand that there's an opportunity.
Adam, before we let you go, man, we often like to talk food on this show. Now, I've been to Chicago a couple times. I love me some Gino's East. My dad swears by Giordano's and Lil Malnati's. I got a buddy that lives there that has told me of another place. For your money, Adam, and we were going to do this before the Notre Dame got canceled and stay up there, but for your money, man, what is the best deep dish pizza in Chicago, Illinois?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's obviously some local places, but I mean, I think of those chains and those bigger ones, I probably would go Giordano's over the others. That's the one I went to a bunch in college, and I was at Northwestern, and we got one pretty close to my house here, and we don't go a ton, but certainly some good options.
Now, Adam, are you still teaching there? I was trying to look on the website and stuff. Are you still teaching at Northwestern right now?
Not at Northwestern. I teach at DePaul, usually outside of the season, although this year, it could be a little tricky because I normally teach in the winter, and we might have football in the winter or the spring. But, yeah, I still teach there, and they're school communication, a couple classes a year.
Well, that's definitely going to be different if you go to online or the virtual stuff. So, Adam, we really appreciate it, man. Adam Rittenberg, senior college football writer at ESPN. Man, I know you've been busy, so I really appreciate you making some time for us on the Morning Rush.
Okay, guys, appreciate it. Thanks.